Okay, everybody, I'm gonna open up. Let's get rid of this virtual background for a second to see what I'm actually doing here. Welcome back. This is gonna be, oh, there we go, part 2 of our fecal sampling course explanation videos. Anyway, yesterday I sent out a video that went over the course itself, the PowerPoint, and how to get the point across of how important fecal sampling is and how important the procedure is that you follow it correctly and get it all done. Right now, I'm going to do a fecal sample for you using the materials that I have here. So I think it's going to have to be the case that I'm going to be out of my face. I'll be out of the frame a lot, but we'll take it step by step and see what we can do here together. The process is simple, and more importantly, in the packet I gave you, it has a ton of resources. I mean, literally a ton. So the first thing when you open this up is the 10 commandments of dewormer use, which is really important to look over. This is a very large topic, and I encourage you and all your producers to read through this notebook to figure out some of the intricacies of it. Now, there is something I want to address right off the bat. All over the internet, and even in this packet itself, there's one confusing aspect. Some of them say to use 28 milliliters of liquid, and some of them say to use 26 milliliters of liquid. The reason is because they're using different levels of different multipliers to figure out how many worms are in each gram of feces. So what I'm saying is some of the things in here say to use 26 milliliters of liquid in your container and 4 milligrams of feces. Some of them say use 28 milligrams of liquid and 2 grams of feces. No matter what, you're going to have 30 milligrams of material. Sounds complicated, but it's not. The difference is when you're doing 26 milliliters, you multiply by 25 to get your final egg count. When you're doing 2 grams or 28 milliliters, you multiply by 50. We are going to use 28 milliliters of liquid and 2 milliliters or 2 grams of feces, 28 and 2. There's actually lines on this jar that show you exactly where to do that. This is the exact same setup that you guys got. So you'll see right here, there's a 26 milliliter, it says horses. We're not using that. Above it says 28 milliliters goats, and then it says 30 where the fill line is. That's what we're going to use when we do this procedure today. Real quick, why are we doing the fecal egg count? Because we just went over the 5-point check yesterday. Well, we're going to use it as kind of an addendum to that program. So if we want to do a fecal count reduction test to see if our dewormer is still working, we need to do it on a microscope. If we have an animal that has a constellation of symptoms that would lead us to believe they have a high infection of artpole worm, or if there are 3 on the FAMACHA and we're not sure if we want to treat them with the dewormer, we can get a fecal sample, check out that sample, and see if they meet criteria for treatment. The criteria for treatment is different depending on what you're using, but I'll get into that later. Anyway, if we do the fecal count and we see that there are more than the recommended level of eggs, then we will treat, period, and we'll make a record of it and have data of it. This is also just a great, quick, easy checkup on your herd. Actually, today I have 2 samples here. These are real-life samples I'm running. One of them is from my own goats, which I ran out to grab yesterday, but then I was out and about, and I was able to stop at a person's house who has a problem with some baby goats. They thought it had a hernia. It's definitely not a hernia from what I could tell, although I'm not a vet, but we did some FAMACHA on it, and it would definitely concern me that there are some parasite issues. So let's run through this, this feces and see what we can find here, okay? All the instructions are in your booklet. The best instructions, are in this one here. Basically, you can read this little packet here that starts with this beautiful picture, and it will give you exactly what I'm about to do here. It doesn't take long to do this. The way we do it in Ulster is we charge money to use the lab because we feel like it's worth it. It's $5 per hour. It's up to you what you want to do, free or more. This is a very vital service. My point is that I can do probably 10 samples in an hour if I needed to, if I'm really rushing. As long as you have all your materials set up ahead of time, it's very easy. Okay, so without further ado, let's look at some poop in a microscope. So we have our sample, obviously. Oh, I forgot to grab something. One thing that's important is cleanup. And so I have a large bottle of bleach that I will use to wipe everything down when we complete the project because we don't want, obviously, manure and feces somewhere where it's not supposed to be. I believe that most of you received tablecloths in your packet as well. So it's a double precautionary measure. We use a tablecloth and we do a bleach wipe down, obviously. This is a dangerous material at times. In your packet, before you start, you will gather your materials. You have paper cups, I believe. I just cut this off for today. I have my scale here. I have something to put on the scale to weigh. I have a million of these laying around. I have my sample, double bag. I have my Chalex slide that you have, and I have my syringe. Your syringe may look a little different than mine. I have my microscope, and I also have my saturated solution. The instructions for making this are in your packet. I'm using Epsom salt. It's cheap, it's innocuous, and I have heard through the past that the official concentrations that they use to make this flotation solution, like the stuff you buy, can actually lyse the cells and the eggs and blow them up, so they're not good to count. So what my point is, Epsom salts or regular salts are a really great thing to use. They're cheap, they're everywhere, and they'll do what you need to get done. Oh, I didn't pull this out. This is something I have too. This is a strainer. And if you start doing fecal samples throughout the year, you'll see that obviously the manure is different. If they're eating hay, it's going to be coarser, and you may need to run it through a filter. And you've all got one of these too. Lush grass, typical summertime, you're not going to usually need this. So not a big deal. Okay, I got my solution. I made it yesterday, so I know it's super saturated. First thing I'm going to do is measure out my liquid. So again, I've told you all we need, well, this thing will work, 28 milliliters of liquid in here. But we're going to need 30 total of material. We need 28 in here. So I'm going to fill this up to the 28 line. Okay, pretty simple so far, everybody. Obviously, if you go over, you can pour some out. All right, that's right on the 28 there. Perfect. I have an option here. You guys receive scales in your packets. So what you really should do, ideally, I forgot about some tongue depressors, is weigh out 2 grams of feces. If you're in a pinch and you don't have your scale, that's not a big deal, because you can just keep adding feces into this container until you get to the 30 mark line. It's not as accurate, but if you're in a pinch and you're in the field, you can do that. Let me zero this out real quick on my scale. And then let's put some feces in here and see what happens. Not the best sample. I didn't collect this myself. There's hay in it. I can see all kinds of stuff in here. So, and I can tell the animals are certainly eating hay. This looks like an old sample to me, but we'll do our best, see what we can do. Obviously, the drier the feces, the more it's going to take to get you up to 2 grams. So I'm literally picking hay out of this manure right now because, like I said, when you take the sample, take it in a plastic bag, put it in the fridge, treat it right, because, you're only as good as your sample. Okay, there we go, right on the button. We're at 2 grams. So the reason you got these cups is because it's far easier to mix something in something like this than it is to try to mix it in this bad boy. So we know our conditions are correct. We know our measurements are correct. So I'm going to put the manure in there, and I'm going to put my liquid in there. So now we know we got the correct ratio. This may actually take a minute. So sometimes I will just prep and label. Like if I have 5 samples to do, I might just prep and label them all at once, because really it takes a little while for the manure patty to break up in here. You can see I'm just mixing it up. And you really kind of want it to sit on the slide for a minute or two, because what's going to happen, what we're hoping to occur, is that the eggs are going to float to the surface of this super saturated liquid. So they're going to float to the top of the slide, making them very easy to see. Now, obviously, when I look in the microscope, you all aren't going to be able to see what I'm seeing, but there are plenty of pictures in your packet. And anytime you see a worm egg, we're going to count it. We cannot tell the difference if it's barber pole worm or if it's another type of worm at this point until they hatch. And I don't think anybody here has the resources or the will to want to be hatching parasite eggs out in their house or lab at this point. We'll leave that to the professionals. So anyway, I'm still continuing to mash this up a little bit. You will be using your cup and your tongue depressor. I also recommend, pro tip, have a trash can right here so that you have something to throw this stuff away, because it is wet. It's kind of nasty. You are literally working with manure. Okay, I'm gonna let this set for a second. Throw my tongue depressor away. Okay, so far you see it's a pretty simple situation. I'm gonna let this sit for 1 minute. I am gonna use the strainer, I think, to the truth. I'm shortly cut. So that's all right, we won't use the strainer. Normally I would with this stuff. While we're letting this settle for 1 minute, I want to talk about something else, and that is the importance of mitigation techniques if you do have eggs. Yesterday, I made it a point to say that if you have parasite problems consistently, you're overgrazing or you are overstocked. That's the truth. So how do you prevent that? Well, here's a couple quick things I just want to get out there. If you do have to deworm, don't deworm, or deworm only on a dirty pasture. Don't deworm and put your animals out on new pasture where they're going to graze. Have a sacrifice area. That area could be a pasture that you're not going to come back to for a month or two, ideally. That could be a pasture that you're about to cut very short, because we know that sunlight's a great sanitizer. So if that sunlight's hitting the ground, it should kill most of those bacteria, or excuse me, the parasites. The point is, we don't want to deworm because we talked at length about how what's going to happen. We're going to put that dewormer in the animal. The 100 eggs, the 100 parasites are in it. 95 of them are going to die, and 5 are going to come back out. Those are the resistant ones. So what are those resistant ones going to do in our clean pasture? They're going to breed like crazy in there. Then we come up back around to that pasture, or if you stay in there for a month or two, assuming you're not rotating, then you're going to suck. Those sheep and goats are going to eat those resistant parasites. You've got a problem. You have to drop worms on a dirty pasture. I would give it 48 hours to evacuate those parasites after you give the dewormer. A lot of people even put the animals on pavement for 2 days. It's 2 days. If you have shelter, some hay, and some snacks for them, and clean water for 2 days, it'll be much less detrimental to them than having a lot of worms in their system. So I see that commonly where people drop the worms on the pavement, power wash it off, away from everything, or just let the sunlight kill those animals. Because once they desiccate, once that manure dries out, they're cooked too. Okay, that was just a word. I want to mention that. Your notebook also contains multiple handouts and fact sheets about how to mitigate worm problems by using grazing techniques and by using sacrifice paddocks and those types of strategies. They're cheap, they're easy, they just require planning. And once you do it once, it becomes like second nature. So I rotate a lot of cattle. I run cattle myself and some goats, but the goats are a lot tougher to keep in. But I rotate at least once a day, typically, depending on the size of the herd. It's been great. Oh, what am I doing? Sorry. I am assuming this has been sitting for about 5 minutes. It's only been a couple, but let's assume. Our liquid's in there. I'm going to suck it up with a syringe, and then I'm going to insert it into the slide. There's 2 chambers on this slide. It's a special chambered slide with grids on it. So there's holes on this side. A pro tip, there's holes on both sides, actually. A pro tip is that once this gets wet, it's harder to fill up. So don't go wash them out before you start your session. There are tips and tricks that as you do this for longer, you will learn how to get the material into these slides, because it's not the easiest thing to do. And maybe if you talk to a chemist friend, they may have an idea, or a biologist friend, they might have an idea how to do it easier. But the point is, when it's dry, it's a lot easier to get the material in here. I have my syringe, I have my slide. I'm going to put this right up against the side here and start pushing that water into the slide. And there's a cover on the slide. So now, I don't know if I can show you, but the material is now inside there. See it sitting inside that spot? And what you want to do is have liquid to fill the entire grid area. It doesn't have to fill the whole slide, but you're going to be counting on that grid. So that's what you need to do. Now my slide is full. I have 2 sides of it. I'm going to grab my scope, set it on 100, which is 10 times 10. So you want to find the 10 one down here. Open this bad boy up. Now I still have a monoscope, or I think you guys are using stereoscopes with 2 eye things. Lucky you, because I get eye strain from doing this for too long. Anyway, we are on 100. Let's get this bad boy up in here. And what you really want to do is to focus on, the easiest way to find what you're looking for is to focus on the green lines. Get the green lines of the grid to be in focus, and then you're going to be in focus enough to see the eggs that have floated to the top. So as I look in here, all right, perfect, looking good. Another great way to find things, and you'll see this in your handout, is the edge of the bubbles. There's nothing really perfectly round in nature, but in these slides, there's many very perfectly round, dark, banded circles. Those are air bubbles. They're everywhere. If those are in focus, you're also in good shape. So if you got the green lines in focus and the bubbles in focus, then you are in great shape. The way this slide is built is that the eyepiece that you can see through in here fits exactly in the middle of it. Now this part takes practice. This is the hardest part of the whole thing. You need to run up and down that grid, that slide grid, and count all the eggs in. So you're gonna go up and down. Remember, the eyepiece fits in the middle there, up and down, until you count both sides of that slide, all the grids. So let me just run through here. You can watch me do it a little bit from where you are. So I'm going to find the corner here. And then, like I said, this is the hardest part of the whole thing, because everything's opposite underneath the slide too. Keep that in mind. So as I'm looking here and trying to find the corner. Okay, I found the corner. Now I got mine lined up on this grid, and I'm going to just start moving it up. Make sure, little adjustment to the magnification. I'm in focus. Okay, there's an egg. Good. Can't show you guys, but I guarantee you, I will assure you they look exactly like the picture. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep cruising through here and counting. 2 eggs, 3 eggs. If you need a counter, grab one. Or if you need to make hashtags, grab one. Yeah, I'm gonna run through this whole thing, counting these slides. Then when I get to the edge of this one, I'm gonna move to the next one over. The other part of that slide, the other thing, find the edge again, just like I did last time. And there it is. And start moving up and down the slides and count eggs. There's 1. And I am surprised I'm not seeing as many eggs in here as I thought, and that's not promising for this poor little animal, because it may be something else going on with it. I'm also seeing the bubbles. I'm seeing bits of hay. I'm seeing what I believe, and I often see in a lot of them, are these stringy looking white things, which I believe are hatched lungworms. I'm not going to go into that because I think I've seen them in they're either hatched lungworms or hatched barb worms, but I've seen them in every single sample I've had. So we're just counting eggs. We're not going to deal with anything we see in the slide that can be moving or is an actual living animal. We're just counting eggs. Keep that in mind. Once I complete that, I shut the scope off. I rinse out my slide really good in the industrial sink or wherever I have access to. I know it's another thing I didn't mention. You really need to have a sink nearby to clean all this stuff off. And then if I have my next one set up, I'll set up the next slide and watch that one. Often there's a couple of us that are in the lab together. That's part of the fun of this project is you get to sit down and farm gossip with other producers. It's great. You'll probably learn something new and you'll make a new friend. So anyway, my point is while we're doing that, I'll often, we'll run back and forth and switch up to clean and come back and do this. And like I said, you can easily do between 5 and 10 in an hour, no problem, 5 minutes. Now, you have your sheets in here to keep track of your producers. I'm not looking for any specific information from anybody. We just want to see if people are, where the hotspots are and what's going on and how the levels are in your spot. So looking through here, if you do need, remember, if you do need to treat, there's all treatment options are in here too, exactly what you should do, the latest stuff, which is doubling up, and the dosage numbers, because obviously goats take a little more than the sheep. Here's, if you want to get into it, here's the life cycle, so you can learn a little bit more about how that egg works. Because again, part of this project is getting people to adjust their management style to make it less conducive to parasite problems. But anyway, it's in here somewhere. So take a look, go through this, read through it, try to run one yourself. You may have to go out to another farm and grab some manure from somebody. Oh, here's what I was looking for. Here is the recording sheets I gave like multiple copies of. It's obviously backwards, it's tough to see, but it asks you to fill out as much as possible. It's got the date, it has the farm, it's not required to put the farm name. I'm not going to publish this anywhere with any identifying information whatsoever. It's got the county, we'd like to know that, what you're growing, sheep, has breeds, and whether it's meat or milk or fiber. And then it allows you to indicate where you had some issues for deworming from the 5-point check. It goes FAMACHA, body condition score, tail dag, bottle jaw, coat follow-up. If you are going to do a fecal count number, it asks for the number and what your plan is. And that's where you guys come in as the educators. So this person says, I have a high worm load, as indicated by these 6 samples I brought in, and they're all high. What am I going to do about it? Well, that's when you guys can sit down with this book, and you don't need to keep all this in your memory. This is a process. It's something you learn as you do it. Let's start brainstorming ideas for how to mitigate those issues, whether it's just through treatment or it's through treatment and management, which is pretty much part of the course. You can't have one without the other and be successful. And then I'm always here too for you. So feel free to reach out. I've loved this project since it started. I'm really happy it got funded. I can't thank you enough for your participation in it. And I think this is a really worthwhile project. Again, it's going to get warmer and wetter up here, and we're going to continue to have more and more and more parasite issues across the board. So this is just one way to stop that. And this is also a way to introduce yourself to local producers. And it's also a way to start getting more progressive and holistic management techniques as far as rotations go and prophylactic herbs and things like that. You can start talking about those things with your producers and actually come up with a solid plan to stop that. Anyway, I hope this all made sense. Best of luck to you with your slides and microscopes. Get that lab up and running and give me a ring. I'm going to try to get on to all of your classes so I can just be there with you. Otherwise, have a great weekend, guys, and I hope you can enjoy this webinar. Thanks.